Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show here on Reason and Theology, the interview everyone has been waiting for with Rob from Blue Catholic Collar. Is that the name of the channel? Did I get it right? I've seen a few of your streams. Blue Collar Catholic, that's right. Yeah, I've seen a few of your streams. I really appreciate it because you've been defending the magisterium of the Catholic Church, and that is a position that is so rare these days. So welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you inviting me. I don't get invited to too many places.
Is that right? So I understand you have a day job, and from the videos I've seen, you have a day job, but then you kind of do this on the side and you promote the Catholic faith. That's awesome. So just tell me a little bit more about yourself before we dive maybe into some specifics.
So I grew up in the inner city, Newark and Irvington, New Jersey. Got in a lot of trouble as a kid. I was baptized Catholic, made First Holy Communion. And then for some reason, I guess my older brothers and sisters took me. And when they were finished making their confirmation, they stopped going. So that's the first I went. And at about the age of 12, had some gangsters in the neighborhood, pull up one day in a black Lincoln, just like you see in the movies, and tell me to help them out, because there were some of them were relatives, some of them were friends. They were older. I was 12. They were like 18. And they gave me these lawn bags to help carry up the stairs because we lived in apartment buildings. Everybody lived in apartment buildings next to each other, what we used to call tenements. And as I'm carrying, I'm like, wow, this smells like weed. So we had like, I don't know, a couple 100 pounds of weed. And they cut it up on some scales with, I remember Led Zeppelin on the 8-track, and then BTO taking care of business. And they threw me a pound of pot and said, hey, go sell this to your friends. And that started my life as a dealer. And then that was in the summer. And that September, up north, we started school in September. My 6th grade teacher was a part-time pharmacist. So he gave me a bottle of Valiums to go sell. And so I went to the projects and sold them. And then next thing you know, he had me selling opioids. And from the age of 12 until I went into the Navy at 19, I was just a really bad kid. I mean, I had great parents. They had no idea what was going on. They're very loving, hardworking parents. And I was always respectful to them because they were just good parents. So they had no clue what I was doing. And but I knew it was wrong. And by the time I was 19, I went to the Navy. And it was a miracle because I stopped going to school at like 9th grade. At 14 years old, I took my girlfriend to Planned Parenthood. We had an abortion. And as a side note, just to let anybody know who's struggling with this past sin, for sin abound, grace abounds so much more. And by the grace of God, I've been married to that girl for 38 years. We have 5 children, and we're expecting our 13th and 14th grandbaby this year. And we don't deserve that. That is truly grace. Wow. And so when I went to the Navy, I promised her I would marry her and take her out of the hood. And they weren't going to take me because I was a high school dropout. So they said, you got to score really high to get an exemption. So I scored pretty high on the test and I got in. And so imagine from age 12 to 19, I was just partying every night. So even though I was gifted athletically when I was really young, I was always the fastest kid. But by the time I was in Navy boot camp, I was so out of shape. And Navy boot camp's a lot easier than the Marine Corps and the Army boot camp. But man, it was a struggle for me because I had a nice Italian mom who always made my clothes, made my bed, did my laundry. And now I had to make my own bed and fold everything up. And I failed like every inspection. So like, if you ever seen The Officer and the Gentleman where they take him out and he's doing all these exercises, that was me every night. And every night I'd have to come in and make my bed and make my clothes right. And one day I just reached out to God and said, God, I can't do this. And I really felt like a peace, like a supernatural peace. And I came in, and before I left, the company commander tossed my bed, tossed my locker, threw my underwear, my skivvies, they call them, my skivvies everywhere. And I went in and everything was perfectly made, perfectly folded. And I was like, did the Lord send an angel? And then some little Texas, I think he was a Baptist, like, hey, Rob, I knew you'd be tired, so I figured I'll fix your bed for you, and I folded everything for you. I was so happy I gave the kid a hug. I didn't sleep on the bed the rest of boot camp. I kept that same bed made and passed every inspection. And he happened to be an evangelical, so I kind of went direction for 30 years in the evangelical tradition, but hindsight shows me it was my Catholic baptism that brought me to the Lord. It was my Catholic baptism that I had the Holy Spirit, and he drew me back. And but for 30 years I was anti-Catholic, and then I was challenged. My dad passed away. My mother married her neighbor, and he was a devout Catholic, and I was going to get him saved. So every day, every Sunday after church, we go watch football. He liked the Buccaneers. We go watch the Bucks on TV, and I would tell him about the Lord, trying to get him saved. He was like a real quiet, introverted guy. But little did I know that he used to Google Catholic answers all the time. So he had so much ammunition that I never heard any of these arguments. So he's like, "You don't believe the Bible?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? You don't believe the Bible?" He's like, "Well, you say it's symbolic. The Bible says Jesus said, this is my flesh." So that was my first stumbling block. I went to my Strong's Concordance. I used to have this big book that had every word in the Bible, Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew. And I'm like, flesh. And it was sarx, I think is the word in the Greek for flesh. And I Googled it. It really meant the flesh. And then eat was like maybe trago or something. It really meant eat. I was like, wow. So when I truly exegeted that verse, I was like, wow, I've been wrong all these years. It really is. The Catholics are right. So then I start researching like everything. I get a Catholic encyclopedia, Catholic Code of Canon Law. I get a Catholic catechism. I started Googling all the councils, and I was like, holy cow. Not only do they believe the Bible, but they gave us the Bible. When I seen in 382 AD, the Council of Rome, the canon of scriptures that the Catholics have been saying is right, I was like, that blew my mind. I never, like all these years where I learned how to exegete the Bible and learn how to expository preach, even though I was a lay preacher. They used to always let me preach to preachers when they were on vacation. I never really thought about where it came from. And I was like, it was like so enlightening. I'm like, how can I not trust the Catholic Church? If I trust my Bible, I got to trust the Catholic Church. So these were like pivotal moments, and there were other ones. But when I was a Protestant, I really, like in the beginning, I really knew what it was to experience the grace of God, because I knew I was a rotten sinner. There was no doubt in my mind. And the grace of God overwhelmed me, and that loving Father God just overwhelmed me. And then as I grew in Protestantism, in Protestantism, there's so many different branches, and you want to get holier and holier and deeper. So I kind of felt myself in like a church that taught holiness. And I was like, man, I never heard holiness. I want to be, I need to be more holy. And the next thing you know, I was in the legalism, deep in the legalism. And there's like two kinds of legalists. They're the kind like the Pharisee, in the temple saying, thank you that I'm not like this guy. I tithe and I do everything right. Then there's the legalist that is beating themselves up constantly in, what we call scrupulosity, I guess. And most of the people in my church were like that. And I see people getting physically sick because they were so mentally stressed trying to do everything right. And then it was funny because then when I became Catholic and started defending the Catholic Church on my channel, I started getting arguments from legalists. And I just assumed they were Protestants, but they weren't. And I'd say, dear brother, I used to believe the same thing as you when I was Protestant. And they're like, we're not Protestant, we're Catholic. And then I realized, wow, there's a strain of legalism in Catholicism. And then when I would talk about the Pope and how wonderful the Pope was and how Pope Francis brought me over to the Catholic Church, I would hear people bashing the Pope. And I would say, dear brother, I used to believe all the lies about the popes too when I was Protestant. And again, I would get, I'm not Protestant, I'm Catholic. I was like, I realized he was coming
threw you for a loop.
Yeah. And I realized it was kind of the same group of people. I was like, what is going on here? I knew I would have to defend myself, defend the church against Protestantism. And that's, I felt called to do. And I knew there'd be liberal Catholics I would have to argue with. But never did I, in a million years, think that there would be Catholics that morally believe everything I do on, pro-life issues and traditional marriage and, and yet they would hate the Pope. I'm like, isn't that like basic Catholicism? You love the Pope, you honor, like, and so that's where I guess, I became like what they call you, a Pope-splainer, because then you feel a need to explain why. It's like, well, because at first I thought, let me just talk about the positives of the church, the positive of the Pope, and I won't have to defend anything. You know, just like, I don't know if it's true, but they say back in the day, tellers, when they were in training, they would just let them count money all day long, real money. So when a fake came along, they could tell a fake.
Yep,
Well,
that's actually true. Yeah.
Okay, so I figured let me give him
As a former teller, I can tell you this.
You were a teller? No way.
Yeah, I was a teller. Yeah.
I could never do that. That's funny. So okay, so it is.
Yeah, I mean, you get used to handling the real thing so much that you can just immediately spot a fake.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. So that was my theory, but it wasn't working. People were still like, you know, they tell you these lies. You're like, why would you say that? That's a lie. And then you would look at, you know, you always find the usual suspects. It's always, you know, Taylor Marshall. So I would say, hey, he's lying. And they're like, you're so uncharitable. How could you call this guy a liar? I'm like, because he's lying. You know, it's like, you don't get mad when he lies about the vicar of Christ. You don't
Isn't that odd how they only get upset whenever you call out the dissenters, but whenever they're calling out Pope Francis based on dubious claims, silence.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's amazing. So yeah, so that's when things started getting a little crazy. Started getting, I'm sure you get tons of hate mail, and I was like,
Oh yeah,
like I didn't know Catholics talk like this, you know?
I
Like,
know, it's pretty wild, right? Well, in fairness, they're not really Catholic, are they? So, well, you know, this is fascinating. So, when did you start your channel?
so let's see. I think I came back to the Catholic Church maybe 9 years ago.
Mhm.
And then shortly after that, everybody was amazed because I was an anti-Catholic. So people were like amazed that I was Catholic. So I told my son, this was my son, Timmy. You see, I have a younger son, Nicky. He was, I guess, it's about 16. So maybe 10, 11 years ago. Maybe 9 years ago we started the channel, but 10, 11 years ago I came back to church. I said, hey, let me make a video and tell everybody why I became Catholic. And I said, I really want to like kind of, in a loving way, kind of like stick it to them, like kind of, just kind of like tease them a little bit and say why so many evangelicals are becoming Catholic, you know, because when I was evangelical, we would never dream that an evangelical would become Catholic. So I know people are like, what? So many, and that's what I got. No, Catholics are becoming evangelicals. Half of my church is Catholic. So my son literally just held the phone like that for like 20 minutes. And I got like 156,000 views on that video. So I'm like, wow, maybe I should do this. So
That's incredible. Yeah.
So then every day after work, I would come home and I didn't have a tripod. I just had an iPhone. I would put it down and I just talk about things that I learned. You know, I was just saying, hey, you know, theologian, I'm no scholar, I'm just a blue collar guy, but this is what I learned. You know, because if it works, well, it's both. You know, it's faith or works. You know, and it was just a concept that when I learned it and was able to explain it, a lot of guys were like, wow, I never thought about it that way. And then little by little, I just made videos like that. And then one day I just decided, you know, my first guest I invited was Devin Rose. I don't know if you knew Devin.
Yes, I recall him. He had that book about Protestantism a while back. I don't know if he still does apologetics, but I remember that.
Yeah, Protestant Dilemma. So I invited him on. He was my first. And then out of all people, this is my second guest. It was funny because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know who was who. I just read about Timothy Gordon getting fired. So I seen it like in a paper. So I invited him on, and I realized that we were coming from two different, you know. But I mean, we had a good conversation. I had no bad, you know. I invited him on a second time too. We had no bad feelings. I just knew we seen things differently, you know. But and then I just started inviting people on. And one day I said to my wife, I said, you know, I'm going to invite Dr. Scott Hahn on. And she goes, well, you know, he's a busy man. He might not have time. Like, in other words, he ain't going to come on your show. Sure enough, he comes on. So I started scholar and a scholar. So I would just invite, you know, scholarly guys. And somehow I kept inviting people and they kept saying yes. I've had Francis Beckwith, Alan Keyes, Robert P. George, Dr. Gallagher, just a lot of fascinating guys. And I'm just, you know, I'm humbled because these guys are, you know, really prominent guys, you know, taking time out. And then when I, and another thing, you know how people always like, oh, the USCCB is so liberal. And I read some of the things they say. And I'm like, I don't get that they're liberal. I don't see where they're getting liberal. And then when they voted our new leader, Archbishop Broglio, Timothy Broglio, I called his office. I said, hey, I want to congratulate Archbishop Broglio. You think he would come on my show for an interview? So the guy said, yeah, he's in Rome, but he said when he comes back from meeting the Pope, we'll come on your show. So I'm like, cool. So I met him, and this guy is as conservative as it gets. I'm like, wow. And he was voted by the other bishops, so it can't be like he's an oddball. Like all the other liberal bishops voted for a conservative bishop.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that fascinating. And so that's kind of how the channel grew, I think.
Wow.
Go
ahead.
As you can see when we were trying to set up, I'm not like a high tech kind of guy.
Right.
So it's just it's by the grace of God, little by little. So and I just do my part. I don't expect to be huge. I just want to do whatever I can because when I was a Catholic, I let a lot of Catholics out of the church. Because they didn't know their Bible and they didn't know their catechism. And I was able to, I was like a salesman, and I talked them out of the Catholic faith. And I feel now it's, the least I could do is talk people back into the faith, or keep people from leaving the faith. A good friend of mine, by the way, he loves you too. John, Catholic for Rednecks, the way I met, emailed me. He said, bro, I was on the ledge. I was binge watching Taylor Marshall. I was about to leave the church. I was so angry. I was about to leave the church. I watched you and I cursed you out. I threw my beer at the computer. But then the more I watched, I'm like, this guy's making sense. And he said, between you, Rob, and my son, you guys walked me off the ledge. And
that's awesome. So I'm curious, do you get a lot of pushback from commenters and stuff like that?
Yeah. And my priest, I have a holy priest, and he's like, ignore the crazies. I'm like, Father, I can't ignore him. I always engage. I can never.
It is a little hard to just entirely ignore them, right?
and I love that he's just like me. He goes right at him too. We don't let him go. We talk. We engage. Now, I noticed you had Keith Nestor on your show not too long ago, and he was on my show also. And one thing I noticed about Keith, he knows how to just ignore it, and he's a good example because I'm not like that. I've never heard him say a bad word about anybody, even when people deserve it. He's just, if he has nothing good to say, he don't say it. And I'm like, man, I wish I could be more like Keith, but I can't. Until God changes me, I'm who I am.
Yeah, I think different people have different missions. I don't knock the ones who take that approach, but I just don't think that's conceivable for everyone. Some people do need to address this stuff and by name for the very reason you mentioned earlier. And that is some people will not spot the counterfeit. And I realized that. Until you connect the dots explicitly for some people, they will never get it. They will sit here and say amen to everything you say, even though it condemns their favorite YouTuber. And then they'll go right back to their favorite YouTuber and amen everything that they say. Yeah. It's like, unless you connect the dots for some of them, they just don't get it. And so there is a need in some settings to, explicitly connect the dots. And so, yeah. Go ahead.
One complaint. You made me very lazy. I used to, when I heard lies on YouTube, I would come home and research for hours. Now I'm like, I'll just check in theology. I'm sure he's on this. You already got it covered. No, I'm serious. You already got it.
And I'm cheating too, because I'm just pointing to the magisterium. They're doing all the heavy lifting, Well, I just point people to the magisterium. That's why when people say a Loftonite or Loftonism, I just laugh because I'm just pointing people to the magisterium. I don't have my own unique theology. I just follow what the magisterium says.
Yeah. You show us the look, because I would have to everything and try and find them. Like, I know Mike, the other day I was cracking up laughing. I think it was last week when the big news about vegan, I was like, yeah. I know Michael is on.
Oh, I'm going to be on that. Yeah. You cut out on me there. Hold on. Okay, I don't hear anything. You cut out on me for a second there. I think we lost audio. I can see you. I can't hear you right now. So let's make sure you're not muted on your, well, doesn't look like you're muted. Um Not inside the studio at least. Worst case scenario, exit out of the studio on your phone and then just come back in. See if that works. If you can hear me right now. Sometimes that works. Okay, maybe try to exit out and come back in if you can hear. Are you able to hear? Okay, can't hear. Let me email them. Okay. Let's see if that works. I just emailed them. The screen went blank for a moment there, and then all of a sudden couldn't hear him. That's odd. Let's see if he gets the email. Maybe he'll get it in a second. Fun always having these technical difficulties. It's the joy, belongs to the one of the joys of doing shows live. A lot better than editing and taking a lot of time for the editing, in my estimation. On the whole, there's more pros for doing things live than cons, but that's my opinion. Okay, looks like he's rebooting. Let's see. Pop says these two guys are so different, but so alike. Love them. Thanks, Pop. By the way, you've been on the channel for a while, and I need some more moderators. So if you're up for the job, let me know, and I will grant the powers. That's funny. Loftonism, Loftonite. See that there's really no such thing. I just point people to the magisterium. I don't have my own unique theology or position. I assent to the magisterium, which is Catholicism. That's what's odd, is that following the magisterium is now considered both taboo and also unique to individuals. What does that say about the state of Catholicism? Well, it says that we have a lot of Protestants in the church, a lot of Catholics who are actually functionally and theologically Protestant in many ways. Ramses says, you know what? I'll bite. Can I be a mod too? All right. I need to add several mods here. So I think that I can make that happen, Ramses. You'll need to use the power wisely. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Okay.
What's funny, I was mentioning my father, my priest, and he called me, and when he called me, it threw everything off because it's we're on video. I'm using my iPhone. It says Father Derek. So Father Derek, if you're watching, please don't call me. I'll call you back.
No worries. No worries. No problem at all. I was wondering because the screen went blank for a minute, and then all of a sudden I couldn't hear you. So I was like, I don't know what would cause that. So
I was going to put it on airplane mode, but then I was afraid it would mess up the live stream. I don't know. Guess we should have tried that.
If you put it on airplane mode, that would definitely kill the Wi-Fi signal. Okay. If you're on Wi-Fi right now, so yeah,
okay,
you wouldn't be able to be on it. So, oh well.
Where were we?
I'm trying to think now where we were. I think I was.
Make me lazy because you do all the research. Oh, I was saying I came home one day and you had already done 3 live streams. I'm like, this guy's like the hardest working guy on YouTube. You know, some of these guys do. I even said to somebody, I said, you know, it's like Trump and Biden. Biden does 3 rallies a month. Trump does 3 a day. So yeah, no. So I really appreciate you, man. And I'm always telling people, check out they ask me, I'm like, I don't know, check out Lofton. I'm sure he's on
it. I'm usually on it. I try to at least.
That's awesome, man.
That's what that's what the patrons are supporting me for. So I try to stay on top of things.
You're earning your money because I know sometimes I can spend hours researching one thing. You know, you're researching a bunch of stuff, making a bunch of videos, and you're going live. I mean, you're not. You know,
yeah, almost all the shows are live. I don't like pre-recording stuff because it's extra time for just a little gain and so there's more pros for just doing everything live than cons in my estimation. It's more challenging. You know, a lot of people don't want to do live because it is a little bit more challenging. But for me, on the whole, there's just more pros for it. So
No, it's definitely working for you. So
until I have tech issues, and then it's, you know, or if I'm on mute for 30 minutes and I don't realize it.
hey, so I thank God I got my son here. I interviewed Father Joseph Iannuzzi last week or the week before, and nobody was here. So I asked my daughter to help, and she's like, "Yeah," because I she's always on her phone, so I figured she knew. And she's like, "Dad, I don't know what to do." So the father was so patient. I see him just waiting there, like, and I'm looking at the time, like 15 minutes, and then finally we got it to work. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I got it to work. This guy was like, just flew from Rome. He had like a million other things he had to do, and he was giving me an hour of his time. So, but
I've been there. It's rough, yeah, but you were able to pull it off.
Yes, by the grace of God. It was actually a great interview. I love that priest. So,
By the way, thank you, John B. here for the super chat. He said he's a great guest. You're well loved on YouTube. Everybody, I've only heard good things about you, and like I said, I've seen about 4 or 5 of your shows. It's good stuff, and so I've appreciated the fact that you defend the magisterium, you defend the church when that's certainly an unpopular position. Oddly enough, that's an unpopular position among Catholics.
Yes.
But you do that, and I appreciate the fact that you do that. I did see that you had that video about that situation with the priest and the biting and the Eucharist thingy.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about that too, because I saw some of your videos on that, and you were saying that that was your priest, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I checked out the commentary.
Father Derek, who we just called, he's our pastor. He's a young. He actually got thrown. He's a wonderful priest. I mean, it was a miracle that he's in our church, because our church is growing in numbers, but more importantly, we're growing in spirituality. Like the depth of spirit. People are just the confessions lines used to be like 10 deep. Now they're like hundreds deep. That's just
awesome.
Since he's been there. But Father Fidel, he was getting ready to retire. He was a priest that was on the news, and Father Derek said, God uses all things for good. This has made international news. He said, and it's shown everybody the truth about the Eucharist, that it is the real.
That's true. That's true. It's definitely a good witness for the real presence.
And,
I saw it, and I was like, at first I'm like, he bit her. What is going? What? How does this even happen? And then I'm like, okay, well, one of his hands was occupied, and the other hand he's holding the Eucharist. So it's like, okay, I can kind of see how that happens there. I don't know if I condone biting, but at the same time, I totally understand it, and I appreciate the sentiment of defending the real presence in Christ of the Eucharist. So it's like, okay, I get a little more context. All right, I get it now. I'm not holding the guy, I'm not holding it against him.
and I know him, and he's just the most loving, holy priest you ever want to meet. He was 65. He just was getting ready to retire. Had a week to go, and one thing I want to
hold on. He only had a week before retirement.
Yeah, it's like the devil wanted to mess up his retirement.
This happened a week before retirement.
Yes.
What? Oh man! Wow.
Any issues? So, but what I know personally is he's refused communion to people in the past because they've come late to mass. And you would know this better than me. I know there's a certain point. I don't know what it is, but he gently and
after the liturgy of the word. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What? At which point?
You basically, need to be effectively to the sermon part. So make the very end of the liturgy of the word, Yeah.
Okay. So he noticed, and this happened more than once, but one time I was made aware of it because he spoke about it. He noticed he came in late. It was daily mass, but he loving like a grandfather, said, you came late. I can't give this to you, but I'll give you a blessing, And then he explained after the mass was over that it's very important to be there for the entire mass. So it wasn't like he pointed this woman out. I mean, this was an elderly woman, you know, that comes to mass all the time, that loves the Lord, a devout Catholic. So it wasn't like this girl he just pointed out because she claimed he didn't like the way I was dressed, you know. But she just walked up and didn't know what to do. So he says, "Are you Catholic?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "When was the last time you church?" He goes, "I haven't been to church since I was a little kid." So he said, "Well, you need to go to confession before I can give you the Eucharist." So he gave her a blessing. And she was there for her nephew's communion. Comes back to the next mass, which I believe was a Spanish mass. So she left an English mass and then came back to a Spanish mass. And he asked her, "Did you go to confession?" He recognized her. Said, "Did you go to confession?" And she goes, "It's none of your business." And she grabs the host. And he's got one hand holding the cibarium. What do you call it?
Cibarium, yeah.
And I guess the other hand, I don't know what he had in his other hand. He might have had a host in his other hand. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But in other words, he couldn't. If he used any of his hands, he would have dropped the host on the floor. He said, "If I would any of my hands," and she literally pushed him with one hand, like pushed him with her right hand, grabbed it with her left hand. And he said, "I didn't know what to do." So I just gave her a little bite and she let go. And then someone in the congregation grabbed her and escorted her out. There was a police officer there. We have Catholic cops in our town that are in mass. So they knew how sacrilegious this was too. And, the news reports that he got arrested. False. He did not get arrested. They said he got charged. False. He didn't get charged. So in the state of Florida, if the police arrest you, I mean, if they see they have to arrest you, they can arrest you. But if they don't think there's enough evidence to arrest you, they just take a report, and it's an unbiased report. They just put down the facts. They send it to the state prosecutor, and then the state prosecutor decides if he wants to press charges. And it's been like a month now. And they haven't.
Why were they reporting that he was arrested? Where did that come from?
It was just a lie from the media. It was just misinformation, just like Catholic media guys report fake stuff about the Pope. Secular media reports fake stuff because I seen it on the news that he got arrested at 2:00 p.m. And I called my other priest. I'm like, "Did Father get arrested?" He's saying he got arrested at 2:00. He's like, "No, he didn't get arrested." And then I seen another report. He got charged. He's like, "No, he didn't get charged." So it was just a bunch of, and it's a lesson learned. And I learned that because I have a friend who's a police officer in town and a good young cop, and he got attacked by a guy with a knife. This is going back a few years ago. He got attacked, a guy by a guy running at him with a bloody knife, and he sees a little 10-year-old girl on the ground with her neck slit, bleeding to death. So he shoots and kills the guy, saves the little girl. The mother's extremely happy. The little girl says, "That's my hero. He saved my life." The cop was a hero. But because it was an ongoing investigation, the police couldn't talk about it. The news put it on that he was a racist cop that could have used his taser, but decided to use his gun. Said there was no other weapon. Said the kid didn't have a weapon. And he couldn't talk about it, but I knew it. And I'm listening to it. And you hear and you see in real time how the news media just lies and twists the news. And then when they were able to show the body camera, it was as clear as day. This guy was coming at him with a knife, and it was kill or be killed. He didn't have a minute to think about anything else but kill or be killed.
Did the little girl live?
The little girl lived.
Awesome.
And, invited that cop to her birthday party, gave him a big hug, made him a shirt, "My hero," and it was a happy. Unfortunately, the kid was on drugs and he died. That got shot up. But in real time, the news media was just making stuff up. We had marches. BLM was protesting in town. Crazy. Right. Over a righteous self-defense of, he saved the little girl's life. Wow. So this is what the news media does. Unfortunately, we got people like that in Catholic media. We know the usual suspects. They literally lie. They make up stuff just for views, I guess. So Father Fidel, he's doing really good. He's retired.
I was gonna ask if he retired or not. Yeah,
I'm gonna have him on the show. I've been meaning
that's
to have,
cool.
he's written a few books, and so we're going to talk about his books. And he said that's his passion to write, and he's going to spend his retirement writing. And he said he'll still come and preach when needed. So that'll be cool. So yeah, so Father Fidel, he's a good man, and he's one of those priests that every time you see him, he comes up and gives you a big hug, and he's just a really nice guy. Just a generally nice man.
Seems like it. And hey, look, anybody who will defend the Eucharist, that's a good person in my book. So, so at first, I just heard headlines: "Priest bites woman." What in the world?
I know.
Huh? And then it's like, okay, I once I got more context, okay, I get it now. I understand.
Mike bit Evander's Holyfield's ear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, so I call him Iron Fidel. Iron.
That's hilarious. A throwback to that Tyson Holyfield, fight. Wow, that brings back memories. Anyways, I know I'm up against the clock here, but I wanted to bring you on and talk about not only that, but just hear more about you and hear about your story to the Catholic Church, and also plug your channel. So tell people where they can go to learn more about you.
So, Blue Collar Catholic on YouTube. That's all I got. I'm just a regular blue collar guy. I just share my experiences and the lessons I've learned, and like I tell people, I could be wrong, but this is how I see it. I call it the way I see it. Some people like that. Some people really get mad. But one thing I'm excited about, I don't know if you're familiar with John Leaf's evangelization. They invited me to some conference defending the Pope. So they're going to have me talk about why I love Pope Francis. And they have some pretty prominent bishops and priests that are coming on too. So that's like the only really other thing I'm doing other than, working every day. And
when is that?
I believe it's next month. To be honest, I don't know the exact date, but I think it's going to be in August. It's going to be like a live stream of everybody.
Sure. And you'll be able to post, I guess, your segment on the channel.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But I'm excited about that because I truly believe Pope Francis is a living saint. And when I say that, people just get so aggravated. But for him to get people so mad, it reminds me of Jesus. He got the Pharisees so mad. And who's getting mad at him? Like very legal, like I was talking about that legalistic crowd that I noticed. It seems like that's the crowd. Taylor Marshall Day makes a video, why American Catholics feel so beat up. I'm like, dude, you got the life of Riley. There's African Catholics that are martyred every day, and they love Pope Francis. I think Americans are just too pampered and spoiled. Yeah, complaining about little thing. What do you mean you're beat up?
Sheltered. Yeah, some people I don't think they've been through reality yet. I don't think they've been through life yet. I just think, wow, if you think that's bad, I mean,
and whenever I post it was funny because I posted, when they had the misinformation about all the African bishops being mad about fiducia supplicants, and then it came out that was misinformation as well. I say, for all my rad trad brothers, here's an African mass, and they were like dancing, like doing an African cultural dance as they were bringing up the Eucharist. I'm like, they're gonna love this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some inconsistency, by the way, in there. Yeah, as you're kind of pointing out here in some of their criticisms, and some of the people they'll point to. Sometimes they'll point to people and put them up as a good standard, but then elsewhere that same person would actually reject many of the things that they promote. So yeah, I think in the case of the African bishops, that's partly it too. Like I said, sorry, I'm up against the clock here, but let's do it again. I'd love to get you back on the channel, and I'm curious, whenever you have that interview with your priest, shoot me a link to it because I'd like to see it and put a plug for it as well.
All right. Well, appreciate you, Michael. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Oh, it was an honor. This was fun. We're going to do it again. Everybody go and check out Blue Collar Catholic. I'll put a link to his channel there in the show notes. Go and support good Catholics such as Rob. So everybody hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. See you later. God bless.